Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our entitled people. In today's episode, my entitled brother wanted my cotton tent for the camping trip. The Ballad of Karen and the Alligator / Snake Warning Sign. How I almost lost my job over an entitled Karen. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. My entitled brother wanted my cotton tent for the camping trip. Here's an old one from around 9 years ago. As past readers know, my older brother is the type of person who lets the tiniest bit of power go to his head. So if he wanted things his way, he'd try like hell to make it happen. My dad, even now with a bad knee and bad back, is a camping enthusiast. It also was always his way of taking a vacation without spending a lot of money. Back then he insisted we all camp together in summer once a year. Back then we never had anything fancy to go camping like trailers or RVs. Just tents. That year that I finally decided to buy a bigger tent because I'd been using a smallish one until then. Before having my own tent, I was forced to share one with my brother. Those days really sucked. If there's one thing I'd always disliked about tent camping back then, it's that I was never comfortable when trying to sleep. Either sleeping on the ground, sleeping on an air mattress, or on foam padding. It was never comfortable. Some people act like air mattresses are comfortable, but they really aren't. When fully inflated, they feel hard. And when underinflated, the air moves around too much depending on how you lay on it. And most air mattresses I've used sprung leaks, and were always going flat by morning. So that year I decided to look into something better. A friend of mine showed me this cot he'd recently bought. It was a brand called Timber Ridge. And it was pretty damn comfortable. Almost like a real bed. So I decided I was going to find one of these for myself, and I did. Got one used for $100 or so on Marketplace. And I got a nice sized tent to go with it from the same seller. I still have that cot too. Back then I was driving my old Camry wagon. I do miss that car from time to time. But having my Tundra is just better. No one really expected me to show up with a better tent and a cot. My dad applauded my new stuff. But my brother was his usual self about it and said cots were nothing special. Then he mocked me for buying the cot and tent used. But that night I slept like a log. My brother slept on an air mattress like usual, and I guess thought I'd have a terrible night. Because I usually didn't sleep well when camping back then. But I woke up that morning feeling good. And I did brag about how good the cot and more spacious tent were. That made my brother fume. Later I caught him taking a nap on my cot after I'd put it out to lay in the sun, and just got angry that I'd woken him up. He loved the cot though. And was very upset I made him get off of it. We have a family policy. If it's 100% yours and you bring it, you get to use it when you want it. Later my brother gave me that age-old "I've been thinking" line. He tried to pull older brother's seniority, and said he'd be using my tent and cot for the rest of the camping trip. I told him no in an instant. But he tried to dismiss me. We were about to get in a fight about it when our parents intervened. My brother lied and said I told him he could use my tent and cot. But no one believed him because that's how he always was. Dad even played it off as him being a bad joker, which made him fume. Then he just stormed back to his own tent like a kid. Later that evening after a hike, I discovered he'd actually taken my cot from my tent and put it in his own. We had an argument and Dad made him return the cot to my tent. And my brother sulked the whole time he was doing it. Later on at dinner he had a tantrum over how the air mattress sucked compared to my cot. And I chimed in about that being the reason why I'd bought it in the first place. We spent the rest of the camping trip with my brother glaring daggers at me. I half expected him to do something like take a knife and cut holes in my tent. But he and I both knew that Dad would make him pay for anything of mine he broke. And then I just replaced them with the same kind of stuff. He ended up having a miserable time sleeping on his air mattress, because in his own words, once he'd slept on the cot, the air mattress was just no good to him anymore. And when it was time to leave, he said next time he was getting a better tent and cot than mine. I just waved and told him good luck with that. Which prompted him to tell me to go screw myself. Dad actually smacked him upside the head for that. I still chuckle remembering it. I knew he'd likely follow through with getting better stuff back then, and he did. But I'm glad I got to stick it to him that time. Later in the summer, my dad insisted on another family trip. That's when my brother showed up with a new cot and tent. And bragged about how he'd bought them new, unlike me. But he spent 3 or 4 times what I did on my tent and cot. The cots were the same brand too. But while mine was green, his had grass camel printed on the fabric. He was really irked when I just kept ignoring his bragging too. Once he realized I just didn't care, things moved on to be more or less normal. But he still went out of his way to get on my nerves. Of course, when I bought a truck, and then later camper trailer, that opened up a whole new can of worms. My brother always had to make everything a pissing contest. He's only recently been getting better about not doing that, as my older posts may show the reasons why. Edit: I've noticed my post has a lot of people curious about cots, and what good ones there are. Well, here's my take on them. First thing is, make sure you get a cot with a decent weight limit. Mine can hold over 350 pounds. You don't want a cot that uses metal springs for tension. Those springs will bend and wear out easily, and cots that use them generally have a weight limit of around 200 pounds. They are also generally flat and not very comfortable. And the springs are noisy. My Timber Ridge cot uses bungees instead of springs. And instead of just being flat, it cradles me a bit. So it's pretty comfortable to sleep on. And I'd still be using it if I didn't have my camper trailer now. The cot is currently in storage at my parents' house. My dad used to be a tent camper, but my parents use a pop-up camper now so he can sleep in a better bed due to his bad back. Secondly, what makes a good cot is padding. Yes, there are super lightweight cots that fold out of a small carry-on. But they aren't very comfortable, and are way too complex, and easy to break. Take it from the camping enthusiast. Though I'm more of a glamper now. Anyway, my Timber Ridge cot has good padding on it. And using it in conjunction with a sleeping bag is great. However, if you're using blankets or just sleeping on it as is, a cot is great with the summer heat, because since you aren't sleeping on a mattress, cool air collects under the cot and cools your back. Not great in the winter, so use a sleeping bag then. But great in the summer. Cots with good padding will keep you comfortable. Cots like mine are easy to find for sale online. You can order one, or you can get online to whatever site you use to buy used things off other people, and see if someone is selling one locally. You can get a good cot like that a lot cheaper depending on the seller. Nice. I recently upgraded to a good cot, and man alive. What a difference. I remember as a kid being able to sleep on the floor and in a bathtub and such, but not anymore. Yeah, when I was a kid, I loved it when we had overnight guests and I would give them my bed and sleep on folded quilts on the floor. Oof, just thinking about it makes my back and hips hurt now. Ha ha ha. What a jerk. Condolences for dealing with that your whole life. I'm glad you have a comfy cot to enjoy. They're the best. I have a nice one for base camp and I just got a compact cot for river camping, and I can't wait to use it next week. The Ballad of Karen and the Alligator/Snake Warning Sign. I wouldn't say this is entitled but more stupid. This took place years ago, before I became a photographer but still worked for the company as a custodian for a resort. This theme park complex is located in Central Florida. Something important to know about Florida is that we have a large alligator and venomous snake population. The locals often tell the tourists and their kids if there's a body of water, chances are good there's a gator or a snake in it. At the time I was working as a custodian, we had a tragic incident involving a little boy being killed by a gator at one of our resorts, not the one I was working at, because he was playing too close to the water's edge at sundown, when gators are on the prowl. As a result, we posted signs every 50 feet or so around the bodies of water on property saying, "Alligators/venomous snakes present. Stay out of the water." But of course, we joke that people don't know how to read. This takes place maybe 3 weeks after the little boy's death, so people were still talking about it. I was doing my rounds around sundown when I noticed Karen and her 2 little kids very close to the edge of the lake, mere feet away from one of these signs. They were wearing swimsuits and were setting up towels. My manager, Al, was helping me and he also noticed the family. Al goes over to alert the family to stay away and the conversation went as follows. Karen, in a thick New Yorker accent, "So you're saying there's alligators in this pond?" Al, "Yes, ma'am. At least 2. Karen, "How do you know?" Al, "I saw them." Karen, "How long ago was this?" Al, "A month ago." Karen, "How do you know they're still there?" Al, "Ma'am, when alligators find a spot they like, they generally tend to stay there. Every body of water has a gator and or snake in it, so it's safer to just stay away." Karen, "So you're saying there's alligators in this pond?" They went in this loop for 10 minutes. And Al's Bronx accent is getting thicker and thicker. When this happens, that means someone is cruising for a verbal bruising. So I'm taking my time cleaning, waiting for Al to deliver the verbal knockout punch. Then the Karen shouted, "I don't care if there's an alligator in this pond. My kids are going swimming in there. It's too crowded in the pool." Al then said in a beautiful, thick Bronx accent, "Lady, I'll personally put you and your kids on the next flight home if you don't leave." This was enough to shut up Karen and she grabbed her kids and stormed away. I high-fived Al and we got back to work. Afterwards, it became running joke between us, "So did you see the alligators in the pond?" I vividly remember the story of the little boy being grabbed by the alligator, and I'm on the other side of the country. It was in the news for weeks. How can someone, with kids, not be aware of national news like this involving the location they are visiting? Especially when it was so recent. I'm flabbergasted at her lack of intellect. I'm on a different continent and that story lives rent-free in my head to this day. Terrifying and heartbreaking. Have actually talked to the alligators and snakes? If not, well, I going swimming. Gotta love when the northerners think they know more about gators than the natives. How I almost lost my job over an entitled Karen. Over my many years as a photographer for a major theme park, I've been asked repeatedly if I've ever lost my cool with a guest. And this is that story. For those of you who don't know, there's a wonderful organization called Make-A-Wish in the US, which grants wishes to severely/terminally ill kids. One popular wish is to come to our park and we pull out all the stops for them. I have many fond memories of these kids/families. There's an etiquette in place for certain character locations, which most wish families are aware of. The kid waits at the exit while someone in your party alerts the character attendant so they can tell the character/alert the rest of the line so the kid can meet the character. The family also wears a special pin/lanyard so everyone knows the drill. Most guests are great about this and even complimented us on making the wishes vacation special. But there's a few bad apples in every barrel. One afternoon, I was photographing a princess character and we had a family show up who, for some reason, wasn't aware of the wait in line. Our attendant had closed the line and was waiting at the end of the line. So the mother came up to the family next meeting the princess and asked if they can go ahead as their make-a-wish. Fortunately, that family was great and told them to go ahead, even introducing the princess to the little girl. So we think things are fine and I told the mother about the etiquette to make things easier. She thanked me at the end of the interaction and they went on their way. 2 families later, our Karen asked me what the deal was with the kid that we let go ahead of the previous family. I explained that they're make-a-wish, thinking that's going to solve the issue. The Karen then said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I may add, I wish my daughter was dying of cancer so we can cut the line. I was shocked. What Karen didn't know was that my uncle, Mom's brother-in-law, had just died from cancer, and his parents had to bury him. He was their only child. I was ready to deck this woman. That's how mad I was. The princess had overheard, looked at Karen with an angry expression and said in a polite tone, but still staying in character, you better be careful what you say. The other parents in line were grumbling and making comments about how she was an unfit mother, they're going to tell guest relations, etc. By this point, I was on the verge of tears, remembering my uncle and just how much his death gutted his parents. When we were finished with the set, the princess, who was a friend of mine, got me off stage, got me some water and alerted her manager. I wasn't able to go back out and shoot until her next set. Nothing ever came of it, but it just reminded me of how much people sucked. NGL, I kinda hope I don't meet a Karen. I don't think I'd be able to hold back my verbal diarrhea. Maybe one day her kids can cut the line with her because she's going to die of cancer. People never cease to amaze me at how horrible they can be to others. Or at how oblivious they sound when making offhand remarks of that nature. How terrible. OMG, what a horrible person. I recently survived thyroid cancer. The amount of weight I lost over the course of a year up till my cancer removal surgery was unreal. I was very thin by the time I had surgery. I hated the way I looked in the mirror because I no longer recognized myself. This Dumby *TCH has no clue what having cancer is like. It literally will eat you up. I went through months of not feeling hungry and forcing myself to eat. No energy. By accident, I found out I had cancer. When my mother died of cancer, I was relieved, and I felt guilty about feeling relieved, but then I thought, is it worse to be glad your mom died or is it worse to want her to be alive but suffering terribly? Those are the questions cancer makes you ask. I lost my mom when I was 21 and am 63 now, and am still haunted by the experience. I will never forget what I saw in those brief few months. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.